And today, I think we want to dive a little bit deeper, maybe talk about some specific examples, things that in hindsight, maybe we would like to remedy, but definitely they happened and they informed how we conducted ourselves going forward. It sounds like you've got a story to share. Would love to hear it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes in my sales career, like I'm sure most people have. But one story that sticks out for me, I think, is my first job out of college. I was probably 22, 23 years old. I had a prospect that kept rescheduling meetings with me, and it made me very frustrated. And I think I wrote him. And when I say kept rescheduling, I mean like rescheduled like 7 or 8 times. So not just like a couple times. This was like a repeated behavior. And I think I wrote him what I think was probably a pretty rude email. I think I got so fed up with him, and I was a younger guy and didn't really know how to handle these things. And I said something like, it's really rude and disrespectful that you keep doing this. And I kind of made him feel like a bad guy for constantly rescheduling with me. And I remember when he wrote back, how horrible I felt, because he said to me that he had been in the hospital and that, he had been hoping to meet with me and he was hoping to get out of the hospital to be able to meet with me, but that he was, you can imagine, even telling the story, I'm embarrassed all these years later because I had no idea. And I had made this horribly wrong assumption about what was going on. And when he wrote, I didn't even know how to respond, honestly, when he wrote me that. I felt horrible. That's, the last thing you ever want to hear about anybody is that they have dealing with a health issue. I think I definitely apologized and said, hey, I'm really sorry. And, I had no idea and I hope you're okay. And, don't worry about the demo and whatever. But I remember feeling pretty embarrassed about that. That was a big mistake to kind of, assume somebody's intention. So that'd be mine. How about you?
No, that's great. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I think there's an element for sellers and leaders that it's critical that we talk about and frankly address these things within ourselves, because that's the only way we grow. I know for a fact I have also made plenty of mistakes, and really looking back at my early career, some of the roles that I was in, I was promoted very quickly, and really never had a lot of formal leadership, coaching, training, and I felt very often like I had to be or was expected to be the smartest guy in the room. And I worked with a lot of different internal colleagues, especially when I was first in leadership roles. And I had a lot of people that worked for me. And I always erred on the side of the people that worked for me without fault. And I remember very distinctly situations where anytime, my department or anybody that worked for me was called into question, I would almost unilaterally shoot from the hip or not really solicit the feedback and perspective of some of the colleagues that I worked with in my own department, or some of the ones that we supported or served. We worked in conjunction with a lot of other different business units, and I very often failed miserably at really understanding what was at the heart or the motivation for their outreach. Could have been a sales dispute, could have been a situation even with personnel where, working with another department or with another sales unit or with labor or legal. And I would always err on the side of my team blindly. And it really, I was told in those times that I needed to work to build consensus, that I needed to work to, even if I was right, it didn't matter, because the key was I was failing to glean the perspectives of the other people that we worked with and that we served. And that impacted, my reputation in some degrees, not with my team, but certainly with some of the other people that I worked with and collaborated with and needed, frankly. And it affected my my network and my ability to effectively network and find people that could be mentors and influencers in my career. Jeff, and I appreciate again you sharing your story. I'm curious, how do you take that learning and apply it in present day and beyond?
Yeah. So well, there's a couple things to say. I mean, one is that in general, when you have conflict, you have to try to seek to understand in all things. And not make assumptions, and you have to ask questions in order to validate or invalidate your own assumptions. But I think speaking specifically to that example, there's a chapter in my book called "The Customer is Not Always Right." And it's a kind of a, not what you expect to hear, but sometimes customers are disrespectful or are not being mindful of your time or this or that. And there is a way to stand up for yourself. And I do think people should stand up for themselves when they feel this way, but there's a way to do it without being accusatory. So in other words, I think that it's great to explain to somebody how their actions make you feel, but without telling them that they're a bad person or that they did something wrong. So what I would have done differently was to say to this person, hey, so-and-so, I recognize that, we've rescheduled this a bunch of times. I know you might be busy or there could be other things going on. I want to convey to you that from my perspective, in the absence of that information, the only feeling I'm left with is frustration, because this is time that I could be spending talking to other folks and, so on and so forth. And when you if I had phrased it that way, it would have given that person an opportunity to say, hey, I totally get you how you feel. I've actually been in the hospital, it's not intentional. Right. And then we would have been fine. And I would have said, hey, I'm really sorry. Then I shouldn't, I feel better now. I mean, I don't feel good. I hope you feel better, but I feel, I don't feel frustrated anymore. Right. And in a way, I think we actually would have built a much stronger relationship than if I had said nothing at all. Because by expressing myself and being able to express myself, again, without pointing fingers, without being accusatory, and with him then telling me what's going on, it actually establishes something of a rapport and a trust that we can be open with one another about these big things that are going on for us. So, I think it's okay to be open about your feelings as long as you're not pointing fingers. And that's what I would have done differently. How about you? How about you with your situation?
Yeah, communication is the cure to most anything that ails us. And sometimes it's proactive communication, really soliciting for feedback of others, perspective of others. And, what I really realized was that I wasn't winning the crowd. I had a leader years ago who was coaching me in that element, and it was, he told me, like the movie Gladiator, win the crowd. Show them something that that they will always remember, and show them an experience. I try very proactively now, especially because I work with a wide array of colleagues, wide array of partners, vendors, clients, that even if I want to see something progress a certain way, it isn't about me. We've got to take people on the journey with us. And it's also, again, not about me when I'm trying to align with the goals of others. Any of the people that I just mentioned, if I want a partner to work with me, it's not trying to engage them to push my agenda. It's how can I empower them to win? If it's a client, it's not engaging them around my agenda. It's how can I, tie things that we might be able to do together or collaborate on to your initiatives, to your business outcomes. And I feel like if you focus on people and process, and you do so consistently, and you always put that at the heart of what you're doing, results come. And I can tell you that I'm very glad that there's a lot of distance in years between the person that I just described and the person that I am now. Because certainly now I very proactively try to invest in relationships, all the relationships that I just highlighted. And in doing so, you've got to figure out what makes them tick, what matters to them, what motivates them, what does a win look like to them? And I challenge any seller watching this, think about that with the sellers, with the clients, with the other team members that you're working with the partners, what looks like a win to them, and maybe ask them. I've sat across the table from some of the most challenging customers that I've ever worked with, that have brushed me off, or that have, I've had a testy relationship with, and I've told them, look, I understand that, this may feel a little disjointed at times. I just want to know what looks like a win to you, and I want to figure out how we win together. So help me do that, and I think we can be successful. It doesn't work every time, but if you set a conducive foundation for collaboration, you've got a lot better probability of getting it than you do if you go in trying to push your own agenda every time.